Doesn't look nearly as much like a dick anymore. I guess the brackets that you saw me make are actually on the chassis now, or gussets, I guess you'd call them, and they're still an ornamental detail more than anything, but they look more like a factory Ford part now. And you know, the whole reason behind it was to double up the thickness of the crossmember right here. Since I wanted to put these big holes in it, I wanted the metal to be thicker there. So everything's on there. It's welded now. I welded them to the frame rail itself, and then ground it back down smooth. So now it looks like that this piece has been folded over the crossmember, then riveted to it. Even though it's welded, it's still, after paint and everything, it's going to look like it's just been riveted because this weld will disappear. And that was the whole idea, just to give it a little more detail in the rear crossmember instead of just having a plain Ford rear crossmember. I wanted to add some detail, and you know, there's some purpose there too. The rest of the chassis is pretty much done now. Also, it's a 32 Ford rails for American stamping, new stuff. I went back and I made them look like early, original Ford rails by adding the dip here for the firewall, stock 32 Ford firewall. Added all the right factory holes that 32 Ford has in the side of the rail for the fenders, spare tire mount, the rivets for the K-member. All that's been added so it looks like an original rail now. And on this car, I did something kind of strange. I don't really think anybody's really done anything like this. I could be wrong. It's kind of hard to break new ground in hot rodding, but I took the frame horns that were on this frame, and I took them and turned them inward and welded them in the center, and that made this crossmember here that now holds the spring. It's a suicide perch, bulldog perch. People call them different things. That's basically what this is off the front of this front crossmember now that was made from the frame horns. And that holds the whole front of the car up right there. And on top of that, I went and made these crazy looking mounts here that hold the motor on one side, hold the radiator on the other. The radiator drops right down these studs, and that's what holds the radiator up right here. So this one mount serves two purposes. It holds the motor up on the back, radiator in the front. It also ties everything together to the suicide perch. So it's actually not even really a suicide perch anymore because it's supported all the way out here on these mounts by this plate that's added in the middle. I made this whole radiator support here, this radiator crossmember, made it from 3/16 plate. It resembles a Model A crossmember, and that was the intent, to make it look like a Model A crossmember, but it's all hand fabricated. And it's funny, these notches on the end right here, they're there so the grill shell just clips onto them. Have a little extra support for the grill shell. So see, the grill just clips on just like that. And it'll be mounted to the radiator like it always would be, but that just gives it a little extra support there. And of course, it'll get trimmed over the axle for axle movement. What I plan to do is just carry this line over, basically just mirror this into the grill shell. And I made the hairpins. It's got a V860 front axle, which is kind of a rare piece. It's a tube axle, the only tube axle Ford ever did, that I'm aware of, at least up until 48. It's got the hairpins I made for 7/8 DOM tube. It's got Model A tie rod ends for the ends of the hairpins. I made all this stuff right around here. This is all just a little plate just to kind of dress it up more than anything else. Made the hairpins and the bat wings. The bat wings I made from a Model A wishbone. Just cut off Model A wishbone. I made a piece of plate that actually acts as the bat wing now, holds the clevises that hold the hairpin together. And these are Armstrong shocks, commonly found in like British sports cars. Cut down dog bones. These are 32 through 34 front perches that are now mounted horizontally. The front spring, I don't even really know what it is. I bought it at a swap meet. It turned out to be the right width for this car, so I'm sure it's off a T-bucket or something like that. But it worked perfectly for this application. The center crossmember, it's a 39 Ford X-member. It's been trimmed down. I took the back and actually pie cut the back and pulled it outward so it fit the 32 frame better. Made these pieces here for support. They're just box tube that I've drilled holes in. The ladder bar, entire rear suspension's all handmade. These or Pete and Jake style ladder bar. I think they're probably the first ones that really did ladder bars like this and sold them to the public. But these are my own ladder bars, and I made the gussets and everything else. All they do have Pete and Jake's bushings. Ladder bar brackets are mounted to the back of the X member. I had to add a plate here to kind of tie it all together. Got long pan hard bar, goes all the way the width of the frame, and the pan hard bar bracket on the weld to the rear end housing over there. It's kind of I-beam style. And that's kind of been sort of, it's not really a theme, I wouldn't call it, but it's been sort of like a detail that carried over throughout the entire chassis. I wanted that I-beam look because Ford had a lot of I-beam details on the chassis they did in the 30s and 40s. And I wanted this to look like something that could have come from the Ford factory, even though it's not. It's obviously totally custom. It still has the Ford feel, because it's a Ford, it's a Ford hot rod. Early Ford-based hot rods have a certain feel. That's what I wanted to keep. I wanted to keep that character in this chassis. Rear end's a 9-inch. This car is going to have a lot of horsepower, so quick change was pretty much out of the question. We'll go with a 9-inch, 31 spline axles. It's a early Bronco rear housing. It was already the right width, so no narrowing was needed. And made spring hangers that hold the rear spring to the housing. Now again, this is the I-beam style. That's actually the first piece I made in the I-beam style for this chassis, and everything else kind of evolved from that. And the rear spring's a 41 Ford rear spring. And the rear crossmember, the other thing I didn't mention about that is it's been pancaked. Typically when you have one of these crossmembers, they're about 3 or 4 inches taller. I pie cut the centers and laid it down flatter to get the back of the car down low. Because you can see this car is a very low stance. And that's been the kind of the driving force behind all of it. I wanted it to sit really low. And it's got about 5.5 inches of ground clearance at the lowest point. Wheels and tires are early Ford 16-inch disc wheels. Tires are Excelsior from COUPE. And the engine, we got to talk about that. It's a 57 392, stroker crank, Johns, forged pistons, Isky solid cam, Edelbrock 8-deuce intake with 897s. It'll have a modern ignition, MSD ignition. All the driveline parts are modern stuff, even though 4-speeds have been available since the late 50s. This is a brand new auto gear Muncie 4-speed M22 style. Big case, all good inside. Hot heads adapter, tilt-in bell housing with built-in hydraulic throwout bearing. And I like to use these pedals. These are just stock 40 to 48 style pedals. I modify them. I'll add a plate back here to hold the slave cylinder for the throwout bearing, and then I'll use a Mustang master cylinder on this side. I've already modified them some. I added a pocket to the X member here for the clutch pedal to drop down into, and bend them around where they fit inside the frame real well. And that's pretty much the extent of it so far. It's getting a Model A coupe body, and we're gonna go fast, it looks like.